My presentation is on Disneyland and Secular Pilgrimage, and beginning with a quote. Disneyland is like Alice stepping through the looking glass. To step through the portals of Disneyland will be like entering another world. It's difficult to simply define Disneyland. My own perspective has been shaped by personal experiences and my fascination with the park, as well as Disney's larger effect on culture. I began this paper in scrutinizing my own particular biases, as someone who grew up visiting the park, as a cast member in Disney World, as an annual pass holder, and as a fan. Over time, I've come to see Disneyland not merely as an obligatory destination that parents must at some point take their child, where they could combine nostalgia and new memories, or merely pacify their children with toys and treats. Growing up in Southern California, Disneyland was a special place where my parents took me once in a while. It felt truly magical, as the ads say. But as an adult, I've come to find that Disneyland is much more complicated in meaning. I now recognize the history and the hidden aspects of the park, appreciating artistry and clever details. I've also become aware of alternative aspects of Disneyland, where the emphasis is not primarily on young children. My view has changed in such a way that I can understand that there are multiple layers of experience in Disneyland, some which overlap, and that there is, to some degree, a feeling of communitas that can occur from time to time. This paper will examine participation at Disneyland using Victor Turner's theory of liminality in order to show the multiplicity of experiences of communitas by various Disney participants. Here I will attempt to answer a few questions, including, what does participation mean in Disneyland? What are its limitations? Is Disneyland a liminoid place by Victor Turner's definition? And how does Turner's definition of play relate to guest participation in Disneyland? Victor Turner was a British cultural anthropologist that was perhaps best known for his work on rituals and rites of passage. In Image, Pilgrimage, and Christian Culture, co-authored with his wife Edith, Turner focuses on religious pilgrimages. Here, he defines the relationship between pilgrimage and liminality based on several attributes, which include the release from mundane structure, homogenization of status, simplicity of dress and behavior, and communitas, among others. Turner refers also to secular pilgrimages, which are based to some degree on similar ideas. When I created the questions for my survey of Disneyland visitors, I had these attributes in mind. I was curious to see to what extent visitors could resemble pilgrims. Drawing from Turner's ideas on liminality and pilgrimage sites, I've come to view Disneyland as a possible example of a modern-day secular pilgrimage site. Due to its international popularity and wide-reaching appeal, Disneyland has drawn massive crowds since its opening in 1955. Disney is itself a cultural icon of American culture and the colonization of fantasy and Western folklore. According to Alexander Moore, even the attractions can be viewed as structures mimicking Van Gennep's rites of passage. In creating a survey to research these questions, I looked for similarities among guest experiences in the park, and generally defined if Disneyland is in fact such an environment where creativity, participation, and to some extent communitas is encouraged. At its most bare definition, Disneyland is a place designed for leisure, a destination that's commonly used by tourists and locals alike. Dean McCannell, an influential figure in tourist studies, places Disneyland in the category of staged authenticity. Like all tourists, at some level, the people who visit Disneyland go there to exist at a slight remove from the world of work and everyday life. Disneyland's status as an important cultural icon has made it into a type of secular pilgrimage site. With this in mind, Disneyland shares several traits with Turner's ideas on pilgrimage and liminality. These traits include tourist sites as liminoid spaces, tourists as half-pilgrims, the connection between play and ritual, and communitas. Liminality refers to a state of being that is betwixt and between. In every tourist destination, there are opposite relationships. Insiders and outsiders, residents and tourists, and producers and consumers, for example. Tourist sites in urban environments are occupied by members of both sides, becoming heterogeneous spaces. But beyond tourist spaces, which allow visitors to mingle throughout the urban landscape, Disneyland is designed to be separate. Tall walls separate Disneyland from the rest of the world and emphasize that within those walls, there's an entirely different reality. Similarly, pilgrimage sites are inherently sacred and set apart from the outside profane world. Disneyland marks these differences in many ways to create an atmosphere of fantasy and immersion. To describe each and every way this occurs would be a massive undertaking, as Disneyland is full of architectural details, design elements, costuming, employee ideologies, and a great deal of other factors which shape the way visitors experience the park. Just as ritual is important to pilgrimages, play is important to visitors of Disneyland. These are both expressions of the same meta-process, according to Alexander Moore. Both play and ritual have the ability to relieve anxieties and exist in a symbolic sense through interaction and imaginative processes. Play and liminal behavior are implicitly linked. During the phase of transition and rites of passage, here the ludic or playful element must also do the serious work of ritual. Although rites of passage become voluntary in modern civilization, ludic elements continued in the form of leisure activities as well as pilgrimages, which in being voluntary, Turner has called liminoid rather than liminal. Communitas is an essential and generic human bond of full, unmediated communication, even communion, between definite and determinate identities, which arises spontaneously in all kinds of groups, situations, and circumstances. Creativity and ludic participation can lead to a sense of communitas. It arises in pilgrimage and non-pilgrimage circumstances alike, as a sense of connection among fellow participants or celebrants. My survey was advertised on 3 Disney fan-created forums and on Craigslist, from which I had hoped to receive a broader and not necessarily fan-based range of responses. I also posted a link to the survey on my Facebook profile and on my Twitter page. You can see an example of one of the sites where I posted it. As you can see here, most survey respondents visited at least once per year on average. A significant majority said they have visited Disneyland with small children at least once. Out of this group, several said they had their own experience, that their own experience was changed because they saw the park through the child's eyes. Additionally, several others mentioned that their experience was in some way enhanced because they attended with small children. Others said that they didn't use the same sort of phrasing, but they indicated that their experience was in some way affected by the child's own excitement. There's some kids doing a parade. As can be seen in the figures above, a significant majority of respondents said that they have experienced some type of tradition or ritual within their group. A quarter of this group organized their visits in a specific way. For over a half, this meant having particular goals during each visit in no particular order. Less than a quarter observed both types. A significant majority of respondents listed traditions in that order their visits and provide specific goals throughout the day. Many goals were food-related. Others included regular purchases, which generally relate to clothing or novelty accessories. Some goals related to specific locations, for example, using the same stall in a bathroom, the same row in a ride, or entering the park through the left tunnel. The way respondents order the day may relate to practical concerns. For example, seasoned visitors gather fast passes for popular rides at the very beginning and meanwhile hop into shorter lines. Others go on particular rides at specific times of the day for emotional reasons. For example, they may ride the train around the park once before leaving because it was an experience they shared with their parents as a child. I was reminded of Arnold Van Gennep's rites of passage when I came across some traditions relating to the tunnel beneath the train at the park's entrance. Examples include reading the tunnel's plaque before entering or exiting, entering on the same side each time, and taking pictures of the plaque. The plaque's message, as well as the act of reading it, can perhaps be construed as crossing a symbolic threshold. The tunnel itself is a symbolic bridge from reality into a world of make-believe, as marked by the plaque. Also, there's something ambiguous about being inside the tunnel, which is dark and relatively plain compared to the areas of the park. The majority said that in some way they dressed specifically for their visit to Disneyland. More than half of these said that they dressed for comfort. A little more than half said that they wore Disney-themed clothing. Less than a quarter of this group said that they wear some kind of costume element. And a minority said that they wore clothes to match with their group, or their group has included children in full Disney costumes. 4 other respondents did not fit into these categories. However, they did say they dressed up for their visit to Disneyland. One celebrated the debut of the World of Color show by dressing in bright colors, including red pants. Another lamented the passing of days when Disneyland's guests would, quote, really dress up to go, wearing suits, dress shoes, and so forth. This person dresses, quote, like I'm going out to dinner, with jeans and a dressy shirt. For another, dressing up meant wearing favorite items of clothing because, quote, if I'm going to my favorite place, then why not wear my favorite clothes? A 4th reported dressing in a red shirt in support of Gay Days. It's not uncommon to see customized shirts for this event, in which many participants would incorporate Disney characters along with the Gay Days theme. Disney bears are popular, being a playful representation of the term bear in the gay community, which signifies a masculine gay male. I once witnessed a shirt with an image of Winnie the Pooh wearing leather and chains, similar to those worn in bondage subculture. Halloween is an exception to the normal expectations of dress in Disneyland. In all the examples listed, the only times when adults wore costumes were during Halloween. Even for parents who do not normally dress their children for visits, Halloween became the single occasion where this occurred. Halloween in Disneyland includes a separately ticketed event on some evenings in October. During the day, the park operates in a similar way to the rest of the year. Regarding general types of participation and limitations of behavior, I reduced responses into 3 basic categories. First, adhering to a code of behavior in which respondents mentioned family-appropriate behavior, dress, language, and respectfulness. Second, a positive attitude. And third, active participation is expected but optional. Types of active participation included playing along with cast members, clapping, singing, shouting, dancing, waving. Some said that participation is appropriate only when encouraged by cast members. Others said that only children are expected to be active participants. Out of 94 responses, only 2 indicated that they have never attended shows or parades during a visit. During the others that did, most had recognized opportunities for participation in each scenario, as you can see here. While most participation is expected primarily of children and is generally initiated by cast members, there are some exceptions. Through GlowFest and Electronica, Disney has offered alternative experiences which appear to encourage greater adult participation. Firstly, through the availability of alcohol at various stations. Secondly, because they have occurred at night, in a time slot that is in direct competition with the nightly fireworks and World of Color shows, both of which are heavily attended by families. Also, both events have resembled a typically adult party atmosphere, including bright flashing lights, guest DJs spinning remixed pop songs, glowing martini glasses, and lots of dancing. Participation is also organized loosely, with park guests joining in without necessarily being cued by cast members. Almost all respondents characterized their relationship with cast members in a positive way. Among those who recalled negative experiences, these occasions were not considered normal. Some responses were especially enthusiastic. These include mention that, quote, cast members are almost more important than the rides themselves, and are, quote, instruments of magic. At its most basic level, Disneyland was built to be a large, immersive show. Every cast member is reminded of the on-stage-backstage dichotomy, and each one plays a role. To the extent this is true varies, and in some lands this is more obvious. While the basic tenets are the same, including respectfulness, helpfulness, etc., the theme of each land affects a more creative interpretation that can be encouraged. For example, ride operators in Pirates of the Caribbean may actually behave like pirates. Cast members make it believable. Without a strong cast, as one respondent said, without a strong cast, Disneyland is just a place to ride things. Regarding respondents' relationship with fellow visitors, there was a fairly even divide among positive and negative feelings. Overall, a majority of respondents said that they have felt some form of connection with other guests during their visit, among which there were a variety of experiences. For the most part, responses were either based on common goals or shared experiences. Regarding common goals, I included responses that implied they shared a certain attitude in common with other visitors. For example, one person said, age, background, political differences all get left outside at the main gate. Other specific goals included being there to have fun, to be happy and to laugh and to scream in wonderment, to bond with other Disney geeks, and to feel like a kid again. Concerning shared experiences, many respondents related this to waiting in long lines and watching a show. Among the former, there was a sense of shared boredom, and several mentioned forming temporary friendships in this way. In the latter group, some mentioned feeling a sense of common appreciation, accompanied by having an emotional response to shows. As a kind of modern-day secular pilgrimage site, Disneyland shares many traits with Victor Turner's ideas of pilgrimage. Like pilgrims visiting a sacred place, visitors of Disneyland may participate in their own rituals, dress in characteristic ways, and engage in a feeling of community or communitas. Though a majority of survey respondents confirmed this to be true, there are other factors that could be explored in greater depth, such as whether or not there's a difference in the ways that annual pass holders and single-ticket purchasers experience Disneyland. Additionally, it should also be acknowledged that their experiences do not always directly mirror Turner's definition of communitas. While Disney attendees do express a clear sense of group bonding and construct a sense of shared identity, the ecstatic quality that Turner associated with communitas may be lacking. In this regard, respondents indicated that the complexity and multiplicity of communitas expressions. And thank you.